Welcome to CEO Money. I'm Michael Yorba. Thanks for joining us. All right, my guest today is Woody Clark, Dr. Woody Clark, and he was with Clark Strategic Partners. All right, Woody, welcome to the show. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. It's a pleasure. And by the way, just so that you know, my name is Woody, short for Woodrow, and my middle name is Wilson. My dad was named after the president, so I got named after my dad. So, you know, Woodrow Wilson.
Were they buddies?
No, not that. I don't think so. But I think he became president the day my dad was born, or something like that. Something like, close to it.
I get it. And we don't want to know if your mom knew him. Okay, just kidding. Tell us about Clark Strategic Partners.
Well, long story short is I farmed it as a company, a small company, right after we had in California what was called the recall, quote unquote, of Governor Davis. And I was one of Governor Davis's people, 5 people who advised him on energy. I focused on renewable energy. So when we were all basically gone, I mean, everybody but me, I was one of 5 people they kept because I knew some of his Schwarzenegger's senior people, and they wanted me to stay on, but I didn't get along with them in one particular area, which had to do with internationalization or global issues having to do with climate. So they asked me to say bye-bye, and I did. So the first thing I did is finish the book I started on agile energy systems, and it came out in early 2004, right after the recall of Governor Davis and Schwarzenegger took office. And in that term, Schwarzenegger often made comments about what that book was or was important, because it talked about agile, meaning flexible. You have on-site power and distributed power, meaning that those are together in terms of the whole grid. Everything has to be combined and flexible. But unfortunately, that was not the issue that was going on before, and that's what caused the energy crisis in the state. The long and short of it is, doing a book like that led me to be asked to consult or talk to people about what the solution to climate problems could be, and that's why I formed a company called Clark Strategic Partners, because there are a number of things. There's technology, which deals with all kinds of sciences, but there's also public policy. There's also things called economics. There's also things called, what's the impact on the community and the environment and that sort of thing. So I thought Clark Strategic Partners could cover all of those, and I have 3 different master's degrees and a PhD, and they call that cross-disciplinary study. So I know a lot about these things, and that's why I did that, to form that company.
What's going on with the current heat wave and climate change as you see from your perspective?
Well, how much time have we got?
How much time do you want? Let's just talk about it.
No, I give lectures about this all the time. I was actually in China the last couple of weeks giving lectures to students at a university where I go every summer to talk there in Beijing. And in large part, the issue has to do with the fact that the world, first of all, is round. It's not flat like in the Adam Smith classical economics where you have supply, you have demand. No one had any kind of demand for an iPhone as far as I ever heard before it came out, and it took a while. But the point is, you have to have a round view of the world, and that's what is very important. The other part of it is you don't have government as being kind of the invisible background. Government's got to be involved in all this because that's what we're looking at, the different kinds of governments around the world. And what we have, unfortunately, is for the last 100 years gone after the use of technology and for fuels in just the opposite way that Nikola Tesla said we should have done it back in the late 1890s when he invented the kind of wireless system of communication, but also in terms of energy. He actually did the lighting for the first Chicago International Trade Fair in 1893 wirelessly. I've got pictures of it that shows you the lights going on just from that. Not digging underground with wires or tunnels or tubes or even hanging over the streets and all. It's just wireless is what he did. If the world had gone that way, we'd have a different world. Instead, what we did is took Edison's view, which is get coal, mine it, grind it up, plug it into something, get it, generating power off in a line somewhere or in a tube. And the net result of it is, for the last 100 years, we've been very dependent on natural gas, coal, and other fossil fuels. Very bad.
Just real curious, why do you think we made the left turn?
We made the left turn?
Well, the wrong turn. I mean, why couldn't...
I was being funny. I'm sorry. That's my New England sense of humor. When you said left, I was thinking liberal versus right. Anyway, okay. Yeah, we made the wrong turn. It had to do, frankly, with money, and that's what it is today. It had to do with the oil and gas industry wanting to do what Edison had started back east in New York, New Jersey, because that's the way they were making money, you know, by mining coal and stuff out of, West Virginia and parts of Pennsylvania, all the Appalachian Mountain area. But then that stayed that way for decades, and as I said, a century. It only started to change after we got into the 21st century because of the issue about having one source of power. And that usually is a problem, and that's the kind of thing we had to be careful about.
Okay, all right. You wanted to talk about renewables and a new energy program that you're working on.
Well, I'm working on a lot of new programs. When you say renewables, that includes a lot of things. I call it green energy. There are some people who use the word clean energy. That's a code word for using natural gas, which is not clean. It's certainly not green. It's a fossil fuel. But when you talk about green energy or renewable energy, you're talking about not just wind and solar and hydroelectric power or ocean power alone. You've got to talk about how they all can be mixed together and integrated to systems. Because you've got to remember, the wind is not always blowing, and certainly the sun is not always out. I mean, there are many days where we don't have sun, and it's nighttime. So with all of these things together, you've got to have systems that are dependent on not just one source, but multiple sources that are integrated together. And that's what I spend most of my time doing and have been for the last decade or two.
Got it. Any particular energy program that comes to the top of the mind that's going to change the world as we know it, that we haven't seen yet, we haven't heard about yet, is still in development?
Yes, there's two in particular. One you have heard about. The other one I'm going to say for the first time publicly in an American interview because it will get a lot of attention. But the one you probably heard about already is something called hydrogen fuel cell cars. In other words,
yes.
If we can get hydrogen, get that from renewable sources like water or air or electricity, not from natural gas, reforming it from natural gas. No, we're talking about getting it from renewable sources. We can produce hydrogen, which gives you an outcome, which is a little bit of drops of water like that. And you can recharge, if you will, your car. And they do have hydrogen fuel cell cars from almost all the big car makers. You can do it in like 6 minutes versus taking a Tesla or something. It's going to take you half an hour to an hour if you're lucky. And then, the question is, where does that energy come from that you plugged in to get that Tesla recharged? Usually a fossil fuel source.
Correct.
Natural gas or coal or something. So this takes care of getting rid of all of that stuff by having a hydrogen fuel cell car. So that's something you've heard of. You ready for one you haven't heard of yet?
Yes.
Breaking news. You ready?
Yeah.
There is a company in China that makes thin film solar. And what I mean by thin film solar, it's the kind of thing that powers this all solar powered flashlight. Excuse me for doing that, okay?
Sure.
Leave that in the sun, you get it recharged. You know what they've done? They now came out with, in July 2nd, 2016, and I was there in the inauguration of this, 3 all solar powered cars and 1 bus. They had them come out in front of 4,000 people and actually come on a stage with a presentation and a whole program, and then they actually drove the all solar powered cars off the stage and around the audience. Those cars, and I can't reveal all of this, are now being built by a company in Germany, and I think we're going to see some of those on the road, particularly in the western part of the United States, sooner than later, which would be huge. Because imagine that, you drive down the street, you park your car outside, wherever it is, it's getting recharged. And by the way, the recharging is held in the car with a battery, so you don't have to go plug it in somewhere. It's all taken care of.
When you're in your research, when you're looking through these two different companies, whether it's hydrogen cell or the thin skinned solar panels, you've obviously come across the names of the companies, like you just mentioned, one auto company in Germany. Yeah, I'd like you to send me a list of those because that'd be great people to put on the show to back up their commercial application of what your scientific application is doing, and I'd like to be able to bring the two worlds together on this show.
Well, the thing is that I can talk about that. I've actually taken my students every summer for the last 3 years to the actual company that has a research institute on their property for people to come and see these solar cars and even get in them. They don't drive them around because they'd be all over the place, but they're there. But the thing is, they're not ready to go as public as you're talking about. As a matter of fact, I just had a call with one of their senior people who runs their all North American operation. What they've got now are thin film solar panels, like the one I showed you on that flashlight, for roofs and buildings. So they have 8 buildings in Beijing. They are all powered. 43% of their power comes from solar that they produce. The one building, their research center, it's 100% powered. Now, what I can do is send you some pictures of some of this and even the company name, but in terms of the car company and other things, they're not ready to kind of push for that yet. I'm, if you will, pushing for them to do it so you can keep in touch with me and we can work out something to make it happen. But it's going to happen. In terms of hydrogen fuel cell cars, all the car companies have those now. And as you probably know, some of them are being sold or leased or whatever. But because of all the interest in electrical cars from the Teslas come, a lot of the cars are now putting all electric cars out on the road before they do the hydrogen fuel cells.
Now, you've got something else that you brought to the table we haven't brought up yet. The vehicle with the braking. Do you have a new technology on braking?
Well, the braking all came from what is called regenerative braking. It was the technology that was actually invented and then perfected at Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory in the mid-1990s. And I was the manager of the technology transfer area in energy. So what we did is we went to Detroit and went to Ford, Chrysler, and GM and said to them, hey, you want to license this? You get it almost for free. American taxpayer money paid for the regenerative braking technology. You're going to get this for almost nothing. You need it for your cars. It's good for the environment. And I'll never forget this. They basically said, we're selling Hummers, SUVs, and we're making a lot of money, and we got a lot of they turned it down. Less than 3 or 4 months later, we had the company called Toyota come to us and say to us in Washington at our offices there, can we license that technology? We think we might be able to use it. Of course, we said yes, because it made sense. That's what they wanted to do, and that's what happened with the Prius. And now we have a lot of electric cars around, even doing trains using regenerative braking. Imagine the trains stopping, all the power that's going to generate.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's incredible.
Wow. So
that's what's happened with that, and it's gone much further too.
Anything I missed that you want to bring up on today's show? I know you'll be back.
Yeah, well, we should talk about money sometime, right? How much is this all going to cost? Is the all-solar car going to cost more than the Tesla? No. They're even estimating the cost to be between $20,000 to $25,000.
Nice.
More than nice.
What's the difference? No change in the motors for the performance. No change in.
It's all electric, and they're just getting the power now from the sun because of the solar that they have, the thin film solar, similar to what I showed you in the flashlight. I actually have, if you want, I can get a thin film solar. I have it there on my desk and get that out and actually show you what the panels are like. But I can send you some pictures too. But the point is the cost. The cost of this is really important because what we're going to see is really lots of people wanting these cars for their families, their friends, and themselves, and then it's going to change the entire industry. But I also think we're going to see the auto industry moving more towards the west coast of the United States than it has been in Detroit. Because what we've got embedded, unfortunately, in Detroit, and I love Detroit, don't get me wrong, I really think it's a fantastic city and it's gone through all kinds of things. But the reality of it is you've got people who have been educated, brought up to, and engineers and all in this certain area of science and engineering, mostly mechanical. This other kind of car is more of an electrical engineering thing. It's much different. You do have a lot of companies now in Detroit now thinking about all electric cars, and you're seeing them. I think that Ford's coming out with one, and so is GM. But I don't know whether you knew that Henry Ford had a car that he first was doing mass production on and everything else, and making it back in the turn of the 20th century. And the car was fueled by juices because he was a farmer. He used the juice from the farm to provide the fuel for his cars. Then in 1923, the oil and gas industry, mostly the oil industry, put it down. It was stopped. They couldn't do it anymore. And that is what changed this country really for 100 years. And that's what we have to now change back again and make it all something entirely different.
Yeah, you make me want to call Willie Nelson and his biofuel company.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, the reason I'm mentioning this and being very adamant about it, you and I both have gray hair. We've got kids, probably grown kids. And the thing is, their future is going to depend on what you and I do and others in our generation. The baby boomers can't just sleep and retire. We have got to stop this stuff and take some action about it.
I got it. All right, that's all the time we have for now, but I'm going to talk to you off camera about a few things, but thanks for joining us,
Okay.
Woody. We'll be right back. All right, thanks for joining us. I'm Michael Yorba, CEO of Money, and don't forget to like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, sign up for our YouTube channel, and if you want to get the latest videos, sign up on our homepage, WFN1, for our video newsletter. We'll talk to you real soon.